Good morning, everybody. I'm so sorry I'm a little bit behind on these videos, but today I want to talk about Chapter 7, and I'm probably just going to roll this all into one video, Chapter 7 and your persuasive speech assignment. Should not take me very long to go over Chapter 7. It's relatively short, and it's just all about visual aids. So the very first thing that he says in Chapter 7 is, what's a visual aid and why do we use them? Visual aids are there to help your audience understand what it is that you're trying to say. We're all different types of learners, auditory learners, visual learners, hands-on learners. Some people can just read it and know it. So we want to include as many of those things as we can for our audience in order to kind of even the playing field for everybody. It's really good for things like demonstrative speeches where you can show steps, because if I just said to you, we're going to do some origami, now fold a piece of paper in half, now fold it this way and that way, and then unfold it and cut the side, you'd probably be like, what is happening right now? But if I showed you and you had a picture of each thing that you're supposed to do, it's much easier to follow along. The definition of a visual aid is a visual or audio supplement that's used to enhance a speech. Now, enhance is a really strong word that you need to pay attention to, because enhancing is what your visual aid needs to do. It does not need to be the whole purpose of your speech. If you just let I'm just going to use a slideshow for an example, because that's what most people will use. If you only use your slideshow to talk about your whole presentation, it's not going to be as effective. When we get into slides in just a little bit, you're going to, just move my whole table around. You're going to see that slides are useful for small amounts of information. It is not good for large amounts of text. People don't have enough time to read it. It's normally not big enough for everyone to read. So pictures and bullet points are really good for slideshows. There are a bunch of different types of visual aids. The first one he mentions is objects. Very basic. If I'm going to do, this is his example from the book, if I'm going to do a presentation over juggling, then I need to have the things that I'm going to juggle. Otherwise, I'm just standing up there kind of waving my hands around going, this is how you juggle. If I'm talking about how a football is made, then I need to have the football in my hand so I can show you all the different things on it. So an object is a very basic visual aid. Even for you guys that are making your video, you need to have some kind of visual aid in order to show the audience. A model. A model is for something that is too large or unwieldy or awkward or maybe too fragile to have in real life. If you are doing a speech about for example, I had one last year, I was trying to think, a refrigerator and oven combo. So what somebody did, and you could have your food in the freezer, and then it would move it into a defroster and then move it down into the oven. That's obviously like a huge object, and you can't build that. I mean, I guess you could, but I wouldn't expect you to build that. So they made a poster and just kind of showed what it was. You could also build a model, which is a lot smaller. Think of it in the way of like an architect. An architect doesn't build the whole building first and then say, do you like it? And then have to change it. They bring a scale model to show, that way they can adjust it where they need to before they get into it. It can also be good for historical objects. If I'm doing a speech over the Hope Diamond, I'm not going to have the Hope Diamond. I'm going to have something that I can use to demonstrate that. Or like an archaeological presentation. You wouldn't have actual dinosaur fossils, probably. Couldn't get your hands on those. And even if you could, you wouldn't want to pass them around to multiple people in the audience. You would just have a plaster model of one, probably. People are really bad visual aids when it comes right down to it. This is especially if you're just asking them right off the cuff. Someone, and you guys won't have this really because you're not here with the audience, but the people in the audience don't know what you expect them to do. So if you just call on them randomly, they're probably going to get nervous. They're probably going to not know what to do. It is going to sort of ruin the flow of your presentation. So something that I told them in class is if they wanted to use somebody else in their presentation, that they just need to tell them first. Sometimes it can be a funny little role-playing thing. If, for instance, I ask the person in the front row, but ahead of time, I'm like, hey, If I say that my product is easy for anyone to use and then I call on you and see if you can use it without having used it before, is that okay? And that can be a fun one. So you're like, so easy, even somebody that's never seen it before can use it. How about you, sir? Would you like to try our product? And then the person's like, oh, well, golly gee, I've never seen this before. And then, you've shown them how to use it. So it can be funny. It can be a good thing to do. If you guys really want to include a third person in your video, I guess you could do that, or fourth person, depending on what size your group is. You could do that if you wanted to, but, probably won't apply to you guys. Drawings are good if they're done well. If you got a really stick figure-esque drawing, it's probably not going to give the audience very much confidence in you or your product. Photographs can be good if they are very simplified. You don't want any background noise, and they need to be big enough for people to be able to see. That would mostly apply if you made a physical model and took a picture of it. Some people are going to 3D print their stuff, so you might do that and then take a picture and put it in your video. Slides are the most common, and I have some more rules on that in a second. Maps are good if you're doing some kind of geographical presentation. You probably wouldn't use a map unless you're doing something like, here's a map of where all of our hypothetical factories are, and even then, you don't need a map that has all the detail, just like the cities on it, so you can show where it is. So basically he's saying in maps, don't use too much detail, don't use more than you need. So you wouldn't want one of those maps that has all the rivers, all of the routes, all of the highways and everything labeled in there. You just want one with the cities. Graphs and charts are good for numerical data, which might be something that you guys want to include in your presentation to show the effectiveness of your product, or maybe how it's improved over time, or something like that if you want to use a bar graph or a pie chart to show the the percentage of people that like your product versus the other product. Those kinds of things are really good to include in this type of presentation, even if it's all made up, which it will be. Just because, seeing a pie chart is my good example. If you just say to somebody, 85% of people prefer our product, 15% of people prefer the other product, but you don't show that 15% is actually a little sliver and then 85% is most of the pie chart, then the audience sometimes won't get that in their brain. But if you show them that picture, then it's like, oh, 85% is a lot compared to 15%. So that could be useful. A whiteboard is, again, probably not going to be applicable to y'all if you don't have a whiteboard at your house. But just drawing things on the fly is probably not very effective because it kind of shows that you're not prepared. The only example that I could really think of is if you're doing a tally on how many people in the audience like one thing versus the other thing, but again, probably doesn't apply to you guys. Audio-visual aids, so things like YouTube videos, video clips, GIFs, things like that can help you if you put them in your slideshow or, insert them into your video presentation. Audio is good. You can have music in the background as long as it is not overpowering your speech. I still want to be able to hear you. You can do a little intro with some music. Those kinds of things are perfectly fine. Using presentation software is section number 3, and this is very important, especially for you guys, if you're going to put slides within your video presentation, which you can just, either do side by side with a video of you and then the slideshow, or you can just insert pictures of the slides or something like that would be totally fine. Slides should support, not take over. Again, you don't want a whole lot of information, just some little bullet points that you can expand on. Don't just restate what you're saying on the slide. I can read, the audience can read, we don't need you to read to us. Illustrate relationships and stuff like that on them, and have drawings and photos along with text. There's an example in the book that is very cryptic. It's the one if you're reading along in the book and it says criteria and then it says justice and there's a bunch of arrows and no one can figure out what it means. So it's supposed to say that it's illustrating a relationship, but we have yet to figure it out. Font size. There are a couple of rules on font size that are very important. If you look at the chart on the next page, I don't have my book, so I don't know exactly what page it is, but it has Arial font 40 all the way down to 24, 20, something like that. It says you want to take up the full space on your slide. Don't just have a little bitty picture in the middle with 1 or 2 words. It's not a good use of your space. Make sure that everything is centered and that everything is, nice and symmetrical probably. Any size below 24-point font is probably going to be too small. It turns out to be really insignificant on the slide. So here are the 2 rules. Major text, meaning a title, a heading, something like that, 32 to 40 point font. Minor text, 24 to 30 point font. Minor meaning, the explanation, those sorts of things. 2 rules for background and text color as well, which don't really apply to you guys because you're not doing them here in the room, but it's a good life lesson to know. You want to follow an overall theme or pattern. That's not one of the rules, just a thing. No clashing colors, no weird designs that are hard to read the text over, no bright green and bright orange background. That's, going to be too hard on our eyeballs. So the 2 rules. If you are in a room with low lighting, meaning you're going to do the presentation with the lights off, you want to have a dark background with light text. The easiest way to remember is whatever the status of the room is, light-wise, that's what your background's going to be. Because for bright lighting, if you're going to have to do your presentation with the lights on in the room, then you want a light background with dark text. Still stuff that matches, but, dark brown background with some light tan text. That would go together, and that would be good for a low lighting situation. Light washes out the projector in a room because when you think about it, the projector is just light, or the projection is just light itself. So if you have more light, it's going to be really hard to see. Sorry that my chair is squeaking so much. It might be hard to hear me. I'm going to talk a little louder. For layout and design, again, make sure you're making good use of your space. Use details to enhance but not overwhelm your slides. You don't want all those tiny little graphics everywhere that are going to be distracting. And then it's going to show what you think is important about your slide. If you have a big picture, we're going to know that's what you want us to look at. If your picture's real tiny, we're not going to be able to look at it, and we won't even think twice about it. For delivery, think about where the audience is. Again, y'all don't really have to worry too much about this because we're going to see it no matter what. But in a conference room or something, pay attention to where the chairs are pointing versus where the projector might be pointing. Sometimes it's not the same place, and you may have to fix that if you ever do a business presentation. You don't want to block the projector if you're doing a presentation. You don't want to stand right in front of it. Got to practice. See whether there's a wireless control device that you can click through automatically. There may not be. And then whenever you are looking at your PowerPoint, there's 2 different modes. One is I don't know what they call it exactly. One is the show mode, meaning where you would present it. Presentation mode, probably. The other one is author mode or editing mode or something like that. You want to look at it in the show mode because sometimes it's a little different in the author mode and your sequencing might not be correct if you're flying text in or flying a picture in or something like that. You may be in the wrong order and it might be difficult and something might become blocked. Definitely don't want that to happen in the middle of your presentation, so check it beforehand. Be careful if you are using the wireless device. You don't want to double click, skip over slides and things like that. Now, a blank slide is really useful in a live presentation because a blank slide provides you with a clear background, maybe while you're just having a section where you just want to talk to the audience. You don't want them to read what's on your slide. So just build in a blank one to have a nice, clean background, and then keep the audience focused on you. There's a rehearse timing function for the PowerPoints, but you don't want to use it because anything can happen, and if your timing is off, then you'll be off, and it might just be kind of hard to catch back up. Backup plans are good, especially in live presentations. You don't ever want to panic. You just want to adapt to it. So my rule is if you cannot do your presentation without your visual aid, that's not to say that your presentation wouldn't be lacking or anything, but if you can't do it, then you may need to go back and evaluate your visual aid to see if you're too reliant on it. And then some tips, some questions you can ask yourself about your visual aid to make sure that it is functional. Can it be seen? Is it distracting? Is it redundant? Have I practiced? Have I planned for assistance? And how does this help the audience? I have 2 videos at the end here. Dwight's Florida presentation, which I will put up on the website. It's pretty funny. The Parks and Rec Tom's presentation, it's on Netflix. I need to find the, actually I have it written down. I can tell you what episode it's in. But I don't have it up on YouTube because I can video it with my phone, but I can't capture it off Netflix. So let me see if I have it written down. It's in Season 2, Episode 17 of Parks and Rec. It's about 10 minutes and 30 seconds in. If you're a Parks and Rec fan, you might want to check that one out. It's pretty funny. Tom's just doing a presentation, but he turns the lights off, and he has a little disco ball flashing light thing. He's got two girls up there like dancing next to his presentation, and he's got music playing. And so it's just a funny example of some visual aids that really get the audience's attention. So that might be something that you're interested in if you're a fan of the show. So I'll move on to your persuasive presentation that I need to read the rules for. So, let me get both of these sheets here. Actually, you know what? I'm going to cut it. I'm going to make it 2 videos. That way you can watch this one, and then if you have to watch it in a little bit, you can watch the other one. So I'll be back in a minute with another video on your persuasive presentation.